Well, Bill, just to start off with, how did you first become interested in racing way back when?
Oh, gee, that's going way back. I saw my first race in Elyria, Ohio, on a quarter-mile dirt track when I was about 9 or 10 years old. First time I ever went to a race with my parents. We were visiting people. They wanted to go to a race, dirt track race, jalopies, I guess you might want to call them. I got hooked. That was it.
Now, Bill,
I never really got into the heavy stuff until the early 60s because I was into motorcycles. I had a motorcycle when I went to high school because I couldn't afford a car. And we went to all the motorcycle races, and my friends had motorcycles, and I was kind of an oddball because I rode my Harley to high school when I was a senior. And I was into motorcycles, but in 1960, I bought a new Corvette. And
Wow.
That got me into the Corvette Club, and I started to go to some sports car races. And I met a good friend, Fat Sam Sheeran. He had a Maserati 200 SI that he raced, and I helped him tune the car, and I'd tow his car, and we go to races. And I started following the sports car stuff. And then when I got into the media in 1963 or 63, I guess, I was getting publicity for the Corvette Club. And I went to WNOP in Newport, Kentucky, which was a little daytime radio station to, try and get some publicity. And it ended up that the station manager says, well, if you can sell the time, we'll give you a radio show. I said, well, hell yes, I'll go out and do that. So I got a tire sponsor, and I had 15 minutes every Saturday on radio. And that was my start in radio. And I had that for a couple of years. And then it was funny, and I think it was 66, I got a phone call from John Townsend, who is the features editor of the Cincinnati Enquirer, which was the AM newspaper in Cincinnati, my hometown. And he called me, and hi, John. Oh, fine, we talked. He says, can you write? And I said, what? And he says, yeah, can you write? I says, well, hell, I write my own scripts, and I do stuff, and I had written some things for some the trade magazines and papers. And he says, well, we've got a new tabloid going every week, and it's geared towards the younger people, the teenagers and younger people, and we'd like somebody to write something about cars and maybe get some racing and, that type of thing, hot rods. And says, okay. So I wrote 2 or 3 columns and sent them to them. They liked them, and bingo, I was in the newspaper business. Well, that went on for a couple of months, I guess. And the sports editor got a hold of me and says, hey, can you cover some racing? He says, we got people calling all the time complaining that we don't cover racing. Well, they ran agate. It's about the only thing they did. Or you might get an inch or two of Indianapolis 500 or something. Just went to racing town. I said, sure. So I started covering all the local racetracks and started going nationally. I went to 64. I went to Charlotte. 64 was a bad year. And I'll explain that in a minute. But anyway, suddenly I became the motorsports writer for the Cincinnati Enquirer.
Wow.
And God gave me a talent to be able to write. That's the only thing. I have no J school education, never went to college. And I was able to write, but I was doing 2 or 3 columns a week, plus covering the weekend races. So I was doing pretty good. And I had another job too to pay the bills of the house and feed my children. But 64 was the first year that I was writing for the paper. And it was a bad year because I was in Indianapolis when Eddie Sachs got killed.
Wow.
The following week, I think it was, or might have been 2 weeks, I was in Charlotte, North Carolina when Fireball had the bad wreck. And it was another week or so after that, I was covering a sprint car race in Terre Haute, Indiana. And Johnny White went over well, they didn't have wobbles, no guardrails, but it was a dirt track, the action track. And he went off the track and got paralyzed from the waist down for the rest of his life. And at that time, I says, what the hell am I doing in this business? I said, this isn't right. But I stuck with it. We went on, and the rest, as they say, is history.
Now, are you from the Cincinnati area originally?
Yes, I was born and raised in Cincinnati. But during the big war, I lived on a farm with my grandparents up in Michigan and Indiana, and my aunt. And my father was in the service. And when my dad came back home, we all moved back down to Cincinnati, and that's where I went to school. Excuse me, my ranger years in grade school and high school in Cincinnati. Yeah.
So surely
I lived for a while until I went to work for the company. When I got hired by Union Oil, and my first day of work was January 1st, 1969. And until that time, I lived in Cincinnati.
So surely, being from Cincinnati, you're a Cincinnati Reds fan, correct?
That's what Gene Granger used to call me all the time. Gene Granger, for those who don't know and might be listening, was a writer out of Spartanburg, South Carolina. And he was on my case all the time. Friendly. I mean, I love Gene. He was great. But yeah, that was the mouth of the North.
Well, you got a solid job in Cincinnati, and I'm sure you've got a solid reputation at Cincinnati as a motorsports writer. So how did the job with Union Oil come about for January 1, 1969?
Well, I was pretty busy. I was doing track announcing, and I was the guy in that time. And the job, through the grapevine, as we know in racing how it goes, was coming over. And Bill Kaiser was the PR guy at Union Oil at that time, which was changing names from the Pure Oil Company to Union Oil to Union 76. And Bill Kaiser had been there for a year, and his wife hated Chicago, couldn't stand the cold weather in the north, and he had to go back down south. So that job was opening up. And great, I applied for it. Had never give a dream that I would ever be handled, because there were some other people who thought they had the job already done. And but I got called up. I filled out a resume, and I had all my writings and videotapes and everything, and sent them all in. And my mentor, Leo Spanuello, who hired me, flew me up to Chicago with my wife and interviewed me at O'Hare Airport in a restaurant. And things went well. And Leo was, if Brando had not played the Godfather in The Godfather, Leo Spanuello would have been perfect for the part. Italian, short, stubby guy was my mentor, and he took a chance on this kid and hired me for the PR job to replace Bill Kaiser. And I'm eternally grateful to him, but he took a chance, and I ended up being there 29 years almost. So it worked out well.
What was your initial job description? What did they want you to do?
I handled the publicity for the racing division. I didn't have to work in sales or anything else. I strictly the racing division. And they were starting the race stop report that time of my Victory Lane girls. And the company was changing names from Pure to Union 76, and they wanted to make sure that the Union 76 name got out there. And so I became a spokesperson in racing for Union 76. Now, I never worked PR before, except on the receiving end as a journalist, because I was covering races from 1964 through 68. So I knew all you guys, and I knew photographers. So my experience is what got me the job and fit me in. I went to work on New Year's Day, January 1st. Didn't go in the office because it was a holiday. January 2nd, I went into the office. Oh, and I had a desk and I had a cubicle. Boy, this is pretty cool. Electric typewriter and all this stuff. On January 3rd, I was in Daytona Beach, Florida for the Pure Oil economy test. Pure Oil at that time, you did tests on brakes and fuel and stuff. It was a big national deal. They'd buy the car. And that was my first taste of being a PR guy of a flack. It was January 3rd in Daytona. And then I followed that up going to the Daytona 500 in 1969. And that was my first race as a PR guy for Union Oil.
Well, didn't this job now put you almost, not exclusively, almost exclusively on the NASCAR trail, correct?
At that time.
Yeah.
But I did that because, well, Union 76 was so heavy in NASCAR. We were the official fuel in NASCAR, and we owned 25% of the International Speedway Corporation because we owned Bill France the money to build Talladega and Daytona. And I was strictly NASCAR for quite a while until we got into some Indy cars and boat racing and supplying product. And if it was an open weekend, I would take advantage of that to go and further the name of the company. But basically, in the very beginning, it was just NASCAR.
How did coordinating everything in Victory Lane begin for you?
Well,
how did that come about?
The first race I went to in 1969, Leroy Yarborough won that race driving Junior Johnson's car. And we had 4 race stoppers there, and here's Victory Lane, and I got the girl, and it was a zoo. It was a total flaming zoo. Photographers are screaming bloody murder, and the TV station guy saying, "Get the hell out of the way." Nobody was getting anything. And I said, this isn't good. Well, we found out I'm the new kid on the block. So we got our pictures and did stuff. And the next race was, I think, Rockingham. And same way, so I said, wait a minute. Nobody's benefiting from this. The sponsors aren't, the photographers aren't, the TV guys aren't. Let's try and calm down a little bit and put a little order in it. Well, I'm no midget. I'm a big, fat, ugly guy with long hair. I said, let's get this. And I got a loud voice. And so it just started to develop that we said, wait a minute, you here, let's do this. Well, everybody says, this ain't too bad. Look, I'm getting what I want. The TV, I'm happy we're here. The contingency people were getting their pictures and nobody complained. And that's how, and it just went from there.
When you first started coordinating Victory Lane, did you go to NASCAR or anybody to say, hey, this is my idea, let me step in and kind of take charge of things? Or did you just walk into Victory Lane and
we just took over? It's easier to ask forgiveness than it is permission.
Yes, sir.
And well, okay, first of all, NASCAR didn't give a hoot. They didn't care what happened in Victory Lane. The track promoter, he wasn't too keen on doing anything down there. They didn't have anybody around, no people to do anything. The drivers and whatever did whatever they were told. The photographer, nobody was doing anything. So we just did it, and it worked. And then all of the track promoters all said, hey, this is pretty good, because the sponsors were happy because they were getting what they wanted. So they went back to the promoters, and the promoter, oh, sure, well, we're and everybody just left me alone, and I had no problems.
Did you
did
face
that for years and years and years? So let's just ask this, Rick. What's the strangest victory lane you ever experienced?
Oh God, Jimmy, strangest, and that's a good question, Steve.
I wrote it out for him, but
I'll
that's besides
say
the point.
maybe strange. We were the first race at Dover, Delaware was run, and there was no grandstands at that race at Dover, Delaware. It was all the horse race track grandstands on, and there was no noise. The race, Richard Petty won the race.
Yeah.
The race was over, and we brought the car in on the horse race track, which was inside of the auto track. But the grandstands were all glass enclosed for the horse race people with lounges, and that's where they made their betting. Absolutely no noise, no infield crowd, no nothing. And we come in and we're all standing there, boy, this is kind of weird, isn't it? Well, yeah, and Richard says, well, let's let them cats get their pictures and we'll do their stuff. And we had a victory lane, but it was like doing it out in the middle of a cornfield.
What's the most emotional victory lane you were ever a part of?
Well, Richard Petty's 200 twin was without a doubt one we'll never forget. I mean, that just being what it was. Ernie Irvin, when he won in New Hampshire, after coming back from being almost killed in a wreck and recuperating, and he came to New Hampshire and he won a race in New Hampshire, race back. That was great. I'll never forget when he came in the victory lane, he pulled in, I stuck my head in the window, I said, welcome home, Ernie, you made it. And he said, yeah, we're back. And that was pretty strong on that one. I can't think of emotion. Anytime I had a first time winner in victory lane was always great because they didn't know what was going to be coming off. And everybody's worked up, and the crews and their owners, everybody is very, it's just one of those first time deals. That was always good too. And I always tried to make a special point to make sure that the driver got what he wanted, and we got the family and the girlfriends and the wives and the crew, and just took care of it to make sure that he had good memories of that first time in victory lane.
All right, Dale Earnhardt was his own man now.
Tell me about it.
What was he like in victory lane?
Earnhardt, well, at first, he was rougher than a cob. He won a race in Ontario when he was early on in his career, and he was going to punch me out. Don't touch me. Hey, cool, man. Whatever you say, boss. But he mellowed over the years, but he liked to do things his way. Well, I like to do things my way. But we got along, and he come out and he loved to spray the champagne. That was his big thing. He loved to do that. And I had a little deal going with West Chandon from being overseas. It was a 24-hour Le Mans. I knew the people. Anyway, for about 2 years, I usually would have a real bomb of champagne. And if he won the race, he wanted to spray that champagne right now. I wouldn't let him do it because he'd spray it all over the cameras and the TV guys and everything. And they hated it because they couldn't get any artwork. So I kept it, and he got, Brodrick, where's the champagne? I got to have it. Just calm down. And he'd go over and we do stuff, and later on we do the champagne. And if we do the hats, he might, I don't want to do the hat. Do the hat. But he'd give you a rough way to go, but then he'd give you that look and give you a wink, and you knew he was pulling your chain. Just the way he was. He loved to pull your chain. give you a rough way, but he'd come around because he knew the value of what was going on and sponsorships and all. He's a very smart guy, but he was his own man, and but we were able to work with him, and it worked out pretty good.
Bill, there are a million races that I would love to talk to you about and ask you about, because you think back over your career and you were a part of a lot of historic victory lanes. Is there any way that you could put together maybe a top 5 most memorable that you were involved in?
Well, as I said, Richard Petty's and Earnhardt, all of them. Every victory lane is great because everybody's a winner and everybody is happy. If you've ever seen a victory lane where a guy says, "Oh, what the hell am I doing here? Let me get out of here. I don't want to be in this place." That don't happen. Victory lane is a happy place. And when you get to work in a happy place with happy people, it's great. It's fantastic. You can't beat it. And it's part of sports. It's winning. And when you're able to share that and make it better for the people involved, you can't go wrong. That's right. But I've been very fortunate to be involved in all kinds of racing, not just NASCAR victory lanes. I mean, I've been Formula One and IMSA and motorcycles and boats and you name it. And I've probably done it one time or another to be in motorsports. I was lucky enough I went to Le Mans for over 20 years straight.
Wow.
I worked with Billy Hagan when he went to Le Mans. I worked later on with the Buick guy. Then I worked with Chevrolet. I was part of the exploratory group I put together for Herb Fischel, who I worked with for a number of years to get the Corvettes. And when we went in 2000 with the Corvettes and they won, that was terrific because I had been there all that. In fact, General Motors was nice enough to give me the Cross Flags Award from Corvette. I've been all kinds of racing, champ cars, and you name it, and it's all been great. I've had a great career, and racing has been very good to me. Racing has given me everything I had. But to answer your questions on the victory, all of them. That's all I can say. Every victory lane I've ever done.
Bill, you had a very distinctive look in victory lane. You were tall. You had that plume of red hair and the beard. You had the jewelry, and cameras could not stay off of you because the way you did your job. And that was that something you actually cultivated, or was it just an accident?
No, well, that developed because I'm kind of a flamboyant, egotistic guy, and but that was my persona. And the long hair and the beard and being what I did let me do my job better because it helped me when I wasn't in victory lane. If I would go on a PR assignment on something else, another event of some kind, I was fortunate enough that people would recognize me because of that look. I could walk down the street. I was just different with the long hair, as you just said, Steve. And that persona let me do my job better. Victory Lane was what it was, but my job outside of Victory Lane let me do it better. I could walk in the AP office in New York at Rock Center and go up and people who never went to races but saw me, "Hey, hi, how you doing, man? Hi." Or I could go anywhere and it helped get me on airplanes first class. It helped get me a good seat in a restaurant. You name it. It's part of the celebrity that comes with it, and I loved it.
Well, Bill, you not only represented Unical, as you referred to earlier, you had several other entities, and we'd like to talk about them, but I'd like to start with the Moët Chandon Champagne in France. And the fact that you went to Le Mans so many years, how did that start? How did that develop? And what were some of the things that kept you going to Le Mans?
Well, I went to Le Mans first in 1979 because I went to a few Formula One races. Danny Sullivan was running a Formula One car for Rob Walker, and Danny and I were kind of friendly from his racing here on the Can-Am circuit. And anyway, I went to Le Mans I went to France, went to Le Mans a couple of times, and then Billy Hagan wanted to go race Le Mans. Billy Hagan ran IMSA cars, yeah, and owned Terry Labonte's stock car. And he wanted to take his IMSA Camaros to Le Mans. And I told him, I said, well, Billy, I've been to Le Mans several times. I knew Benoit Froger pretty well, who was the PR guy, and I knew some of the people over there, and I've been there. So he wasn't going in. I said, I'll be glad to help you out at Le Mans if you want. Okay, Bill. So I put together press kits and everything, and we went over to Le Mans. But I had met up earlier with my very dear friend, Henri Perrier. I think you met Henri Perrier.
Yeah, I have.
Yeah. He's been in Charlotte. In fact, we brought him to Charlotte one time. We built the pyramid down in the hotel where he poured the champagne. Anyway, Henri was PR at Moet Chandon. So I would go visit Epernay all the time, the home of Champagne. I fell in love with Champagne. But I started with Billy Hagan, and he went for 2 years. Oh, we had that was something else. I made the first year, second year we went over Stratigraph, he owned, was an oil company in Louisiana. I made up T-shirts. Billy Hagan had this car on and says, I'm going to make a killing. I made up a couple hundred T-shirts. We put them in the truck and they went over to Le Mans, and I had to cut a deal with the vendors, to put my T-shirts out. I sold maybe 5. Oh, I had to bring all the T-shirts back home, and we sold them in a flea market for, I don't know, 50 cents a piece or something like that. But all the T-shirts. But it was funny because we took the T-shirts in and we brought them out, never paid a dime of tax, never told inspectors anything. And how I got away with that, I'll never understand. But anyway, but then that's how Le Mans came around. And Le Mans is one of the 3 great, one of my favorite events. It's an event. The guys in Texas, Buick, had a car. They had when the V6 Buick turbocharged came out, and I'd been working off and on to help General Motors Racing out. And I went over and put together some stuff for the Buick, and with a technical engine, the guys didn't do too well. But then I kept going back to Le Mans every year just because I like to go to Le Mans and new people. And when I started helping Herb to get the Corvette project going, and then later the Cadillacs went in 2002, I helped some publicity on his end, not with the corporate PR, because they were corporate PR and worked their way, and we worked ours. And I had photographers. I hired a couple of photographers who were doing, and I hired a photographer, a good friend of mine was the AP photo editor in Miami, brought him up. We were sending pictures from Le Mans to the AP in New York City of the Corvettes. We bypassed Paris AP. We're going in. Phil Sandlin, who was a photographer, good friend of mine. I've had great stories with him. We were doing direct, and I sent them direct to Detroit, to the newspaper, Detroit News, photos. They'd have them, boom. So we knew they had photo coverage and everything went well. And when the Cadillacs went in, we tried to help, and I was a big help for Herb. I was Herb Fishel's gopher, really, his bag man. I always said, yeah, what do you want? I'm Herb's bag man. Whenever he wanted something done, because I knew the people, I would go. And that was from well, we were there in 88. And then, of course, I kept going back, and then we went in 2000, 2001, 2, 3, and 4. I went for till I got so I didn't have to do that. I didn't do that anymore. But that's how I got hooked on Le Mans. And I will tell all the people watching, if you get a chance to go to a race, they say the 3 great races are Indianapolis 500, the 24 Hours of Le Mans, and Monaco. Well, I've never been to Monaco. That's on my bucket list. One of these years, hopefully, Lord willing, but let's just stay around a little bit longer. Maybe I'll get to Monaco for a Grand Prix race. But Le Mans is just unbelievable. And I loved it. And you get to eat good and drink good.